This title is narrated with virtual voice, computer-generated narration for audiobooks. The Limestone Hermit by Carson. Chapter 1. I patted my Belgian Malinois on the head as I said, "Good boy, Kevlar." He had just completed a perimeter patrol of my property and returned to the maintenance shed/garage. Kevlar's response was to go and drink profusely from his water bowl before dropping unceremoniously onto his dog bed by the door. His tongue was hanging from the side of his mouth as he panted to cool himself. He watched my every move as I went back to wiring the electrical controls that I planned to use on my solar system. My home was almost complete with only the off-grid power system and a few more furnishings to arrange. I called it the bunker since it was literally built to be just that. The walls were constructed of large limestone blocks measuring 3 by 3 by 4 feet. Weighing over 5,000 pounds each, I had arranged them in a similar fashion as if I was using regular 8-inch concrete blocks. The seams were mortared in the same fashion, making for an airtight, watertight structure. The mortar did very little except seal up the cracks, since the weight of the limestone was enough to support the walls. The roof was constructed with bridge panning and concrete, supported by large steel rails that I had found in the carving building on the property. The roof was then covered over with gravel and debris left over from years of carving limestone into ornamental pieces. The moss and brush would soon cover the roof, making it blend into the rest of the landscape of the abandoned quarry that I now called home. I paused in silent reflection, thinking about the events that had led me to this place in life. I was happy, and looking forward to relaxing through the winter months after several months of non-stop daylight to dark construction on the bunker. I thought back to my childhood and how much I was looking forward to doing some of the things that I loved to do again. Chapter 2. My name is Ralph Bean. I grew up on a small farm in southern Illinois. It was just my mother, stepfather, and myself. My father had been killed in Vietnam when I was just a baby, so I had no memory of him except for the pictures that my mother kept. Most of the time those pictures were kept hidden away since my stepfather didn't like talking about my real father. It was pretty much an off-limits topic when he was around. Sometimes when it was just my mother and I, she would tell me about my father and how much I looked and acted like him. My stepfather wasn't mean to my mother and me, he just wasn't the warm and friendly type, more dry and sober. I always suspected that there was more to the story of my mother and real father than I knew. Even though he was a man of few words, my stepfather treated my mother quite well. I guess that you could say that he tolerated me, especially when he needed free farm labor. We lived pretty far outside of town on 160 acres that was bordered by a large creek along one side of the property. There was a fairly large wooded area by southern Illinois standards directly across the creek. Since we lived nearly an hour drive from where I went to school, my stepfather forbade me from participating in sports or other extracurricular activities at school. He called it a waste of time and money, adding more daily chores to my list of things to do whenever I brought it up. I came to think of myself as slave labor when I hit my teenaged years. I was forced to endure countless long hours on the school bus, being the last to be dropped off and the first to be picked up every day. I basically had no friends outside of school, and being a loner was the only life I had ever known. I spent my free time hunting, fishing, and trapping. I hoped to earn enough from trapping to buy myself an old truck so I could break the chains of bondage when I turned 16. Keep in mind that this was well before the days of cell phones and the internet. Video games were in their infancy and would never be tolerated by my stepfather. Most weekends, the only place that I ever went was to church on Sunday mornings with my parents. After trapping non-stop the winter of my junior year in high school, I had finally amassed enough funds to buy myself a very used 1962 Ford pickup from an elderly neighbor. My stepfather fumed when I made the purchase, But this time, my mother intervened.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.